Welcome back to our channel, where we honor the unforgettable lives of those who left a lasting legacy. Today, we pay tribute to American female celebrities who battled cancer with incredible strength, but left us too soon. Their stories of resilience, talent, and courage continue to inspire, reminding us of the mark they left on the world. Sally Ride was more than just an astronaut. She was a trailblazer, a physicist, and an inspiration to countless people who dared to dream beyond the stars. But on July 23, 2012, the world lost this pioneering spirit to one of the most unforgiving diseases, pancreatic cancer. It was a silent battle she fought with the same resilience and determination that had defined her life. In March 2011, during a speech at the National Science Teachers Association conference, those closest to her noticed that something wasn't right. Concerned, her longtime partner Tam O'Shaughnessy urged her to see a doctor, and what followed was a devastating diagnosis, a tumor the size of a golf ball in her abdomen. A CT scan confirmed the worst, pancreatic cancer, an illness that has taken so many before their time. She underwent grueling treatments, chemotherapy, radiation, and finally, a complex surgery that removed parts of her pancreas, stomach, bile duct, intestine, and gallbladder. But despite the best medical efforts, the disease had already taken its toll. Sally chose to keep her illness private, facing her final months with the quiet strength that had defined her entire life. On July 23, 2012, at the age of 61, she took her final breath in her La Jolla home, leaving behind not just a legacy in space exploration, but an indelible mark on history. Her death was mourned deeply, and only after her passing did the world learn of her 27-year relationship with O'Shaughnessy, making her the first known LGBTQ astronaut. It was yet another testament to the kind of life Sally Ride lived, deeply personal, fiercely independent, and always dedicated to something greater than herself. Before cancer took her, she had already cemented her name in history. Born on May 26, 1951, in Encino, California, Sally was a brilliant mind from the start, excelling in both academics and sports. A gifted tennis player, she once considered going professional, but her love for science pulled her in another direction. At Stanford University, she earned degrees in both English and physics, proving that her intellect was as vast as her ambition. In 1978, she was selected as one of the first female astronauts in NASA history, a moment that would change not just her life, but the course of American space exploration. Then, in 1983, she shattered barriers as the first American woman in space aboard the Challenger. At just 32 years old, the youngest astronaut to ever fly at the time. With over 343 hours in space, she was a pioneer in every sense of the word, helping develop the space shuttle's robotic arm and making contributions that would shape future missions. But her journey didn't end when she left NASA. She continued to inspire, advocate for STEM education, and serve on investigation boards for both the Challenger and Columbia disasters. Even in death, her legacy lives on through the Sally Ride Science Foundation, encouraging young girls to pursue careers in science and engineering. Her story is one of triumph, of breaking barriers, and of a relentless pursuit of knowledge. But in the end, she was taken by a disease that shows no mercy. A warrior until the very end, Sally Ride didn't just reach for the stars, she became one. Linda McCartney was more than just the wife of a Beatle. She was a gifted photographer, a passionate animal rights activist, a musician, and a devoted mother. Born Linda Louise Eastman on September 24, 1941, in New York City, she had an eye for the extraordinary from a young age. She turned her love for photography into a career, capturing some of the most legendary rock musicians of the 1960s, including the Rolling Stones, Janis Joplin, and the Beatles. But fate had more in store for her when she met Paul McCartney during a photo shoot in 1967. Their love story became one of the most enduring romances in music history, culminating in their marriage in 1969. Linda embraced the life of a musician, joining Paul's band, Wings, despite relentless criticism about her musical ability. Through it all, she remained by his side, raising their children promoting vegetarianism and advocating for animal rights. But in 1995, her world was shaken when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. The disease spread quickly, despite treatments and a fierce will to fight. Paul did everything he could to keep her spirits high, even taking her on a final horseback ride, something she had always loved. But the cancer was relentless. In her final days, she was surrounded by her family at their ranch in Tucson, Arizona, a place that had always brought her peace. On April 17, 1998, at the age of 56, Linda took her last breath, leaving behind a legacy of love, creativity, and activism. Paul later shared that he told her in those final moments, "You're riding your favorite horse," to comfort her as she slipped away. Her death was a devastating loss, not just for her family, but for the world that had come to admire her strength and kindness. Linda McCartney was not just the woman who stood beside a legend. She was a legend in her own right, and her influence continues to live on through her photography, her music, and her unwavering fight for the causes she believed in. Ronnie Spector, the legendary voice behind the Ronettes, was more than just a singer. She was an icon of rock and roll, a trailblazer, and a survivor. Born Veronica Yvette Bennett on August 10, 1943, in East Harlem, she grew up in a world where music was her escape, her passion, and ultimately her destiny. With her sister Estelle and cousin Nedra, she formed the Ronettes, a girl group that would define an era with hits like Be My Baby and Walking in the Rain. Her voice was unmistakable, raw, powerful, and full of emotion. But behind the glamour and success, Ronnie lived a life marked by struggle and resilience. Her marriage to infamous producer Phil Spector turned into a nightmare of control and abuse, trapping her in a world of fear. She was held prisoner in her own home, stripped of her freedom, and forced to live under constant psychological torment. She barely escaped with her life, running barefoot from the mansion that felt more like a prison than a home. She lost money, career opportunities, and years of her life to a man who tried to silence her. But Ronnie was never one to stay down. She fought back, rebuilt her career, and found happiness with her second husband, Jonathan Greenfield. She continued to perform, her voice still carrying the same magic that made her famous decades before. But time catches up with even the strongest souls. In her final days, Ronnie faced a battle she could not sing her way through: cancer. The disease took hold quickly, and before the world could brace itself, she was gone. On January 12, 2022, at the age of 78, Ronnie Spector passed away at her home in Danbury, Connecticut. It was a devastating loss, a voice silenced forever but never forgotten. She had spent her last days surrounded by loved ones, her legacy intact, her influence undeniable. She wasn't just a singer, she was a symbol of strength, a woman who refused to let the darkness define her. Even in death, her music plays on, her voice echoing through generations, reminding the world of the fire she carried within her. Ronnie Spector lived, loved, and left behind a story that will never fade. A story of triumph, heartbreak, and a sound that will never be replaced. Valerie Harper, the beloved actress known for bringing Rhoda Morgenstern to life, faced a heartbreaking and courageous battle in her final years. Diagnosed with lung cancer in 2009, she fought with resilience, but in 2013, doctors delivered the devastating news that she had leptomeningeal carcinomatosis, a rare and aggressive condition where cancer spreads to the membrane surrounding the brain. Given only 3 months to live, she defied expectations, pushing through years of intense treatments, clinging to life with a spirit that refused to break. As the disease took its toll, she required round-the-clock care, her body weakening under the relentless weight of illness. By July 2019, she was enduring extreme pain, a silent struggle behind closed doors, as her husband, Tony Cacciatore, refused to place her in hospice, determined to keep her comfortable at home. On August 30th, 2019, surrounded by love, Valerie Harper took her last breath at the age of 80. Her passing marked the end of a journey that had inspired millions. From her early days as a Broadway dancer to becoming a household name on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Rhoda, Harper's humor and warmth made her an icon. She won 4 Emmy Awards, a Golden Globe, and the hearts of countless fans, portraying Rhoda, a character that was bold, funny, and refreshingly real. Off-screen, she faced personal battles, professional setbacks, and the shocking moment when she was fired from her own show, Valerie. Yet, through every challenge, she remained fearless, whether fighting for fair pay in Hollywood or standing up against a disease determined to silence her. Even in the face of death, she held on to hope, telling the world not to fear the inevitable, to live fully until the very end. Valerie Harper was more than just an actress. She was a symbol of strength, a fighter who refused to be defined by tragedy. Her legacy will forever remain in the laughter she brought, the love she gave, and the courage she showed when it mattered most. Alexis Arquette, a shining star in Hollywood and a fearless voice for the transgender community, passed away on September 11, 2016, at the age of 47, leaving behind a legacy of unapologetic self-expression and fierce advocacy. Born into the famous Arquette family, Alexis was destined for the screen. But her journey was never just about fame. It was about breaking barriers and living authentically in a world that often resisted her truth. From an early age, Alexis captivated audiences, beginning with small roles before landing unforgettable performances in films like The Wedding Singer, Pulp Fiction, and Bride of Chucky. She was more than just an actress. She was a trailblazer, a performer who embraced the art of transformation, often appearing as the flamboyant Eva Destruction in the underground drag scene. But behind the charisma and confidence was a struggle that many never saw. Alexis was diagnosed with HIV in 1987, a time when the disease carried immense stigma and limited medical advancements. Over the years, her health declined, yet she refused to let it define her. She continued to push forward, advocating for transgender rights, sharing her journey in the documentary Alexis Arquette, She's My Brother, and refusing roles that reduced trans people to stereotypes. But the weight of illness grew heavier. In her final years, she faced financial hardship, often living in low-income housing, and as her condition worsened, she withdrew from the public eye, presenting as male again in what some believed was an effort to make peace with herself. Despite the urging of loved ones, Alexis resisted treatment, choosing her own path even as infections ravaged her body. As her final days approached, her family gathered around her hospital bed at Cedars-Sinai, holding her close as she slipped into a medically induced coma. At 12:32 a.m., she took her last breath, surrounded by love, as David Bowie's Starman played her final wish. The official cause of death was cardiac arrest brought on by myocarditis, a complication of her prolonged battle with HIV. Her passing was not just the loss of an actress, but the loss of a warrior who had fought tirelessly for visibility and respect. The Arquette family honored her memory, calling her a vanguard for the transgender community, a soul too bright for a world still learning how to embrace difference. Even in death, Alexis left behind a message that true freedom lies in living without apology. Her life was a statement, her death a reminder of the battles still to be fought. Today, she remains an icon, not just for her performances, but for her unyielding courage in being exactly who she was meant to be. Anne Bancroft, the legendary American actress, passed away on June 6, 2005, at the age of 73, after a quiet but heartbreaking battle with uterine cancer. A woman of immense talent, she had spent decades captivating audiences with her remarkable performances. But in her final days, she faced her toughest role yet, one she chose to endure privately, away from the public eye. Even some of her closest friends had no idea that she was sick, as she kept her illness a secret, fighting bravely until the very end. Her death came as a shock to the world, a sudden and painful loss of one of Hollywood's greatest talents. Bancroft spent her last days at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, surrounded by those who loved her most, including her devoted husband, Mel Brooks, and their son, Max. Despite her declining health, she never let go of her wit, her intelligence, or the spirit that had defined her for so long. But the disease was relentless, and on that fateful June evening, it took her away, leaving behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. Born Anna Maria Luisa Italiano on September 17, 1931, in the Bronx, New York, she grew up in a tight-knit Italian-American family, filled with love, but also a deep determination to succeed. From an early age, she knew she was destined for the stage, pushing herself beyond the expectations set for women of her time. Hollywood was not always kind to her, and in her early years, she struggled to break free from the limiting roles she was offered, but she refused to be boxed in. It was Broadway that gave her the respect she deserved, earning her a Tony Award for her role in Two for the Seesaw, and then again for The Miracle Worker, where she played the determined teacher Anne Sullivan, a role that would change her life forever. When the play was adapted into a film in 1962, she delivered a breathtaking performance that won her an Academy Award for Best Actress, proving to the world that she was a force to be reckoned with. Yet, it was her role as the seductive and complicated Mrs. Robinson in The Graduate, 1967, that would cement her place in cinematic history. With just a glance, a smirk, or a single line, she exuded power, vulnerability, and an unsettling allure that made her unforgettable. She would go on to earn multiple Oscar nominations for films like The Pumpkin Eater, The Turning Point, and Agnes of God, showcasing a range that few could match. But beyond the fame and the accolades, she was a woman who valued her privacy, her family, and the art of storytelling more than anything. Her marriage to Mel Brooks was one of Hollywood's great love stories, an unlikely yet perfect match that lasted over 40 years. Together, they built a life filled with laughter, creativity, and an unbreakable bond. Even in her last days, her love for her family never wavered. Her death was a devastating blow to the industry and to those who adored her. But her legacy lives on in the unforgettable characters she brought to life and the passion she poured into every performance. She was more than just an actress. She was a pioneer, a woman who defied expectations, who refused to be confined by labels, and who left an indelible mark on the world of film, theater, and television. And Bancroft may be gone, but the power of her presence, her words, and her performances will echo for generations to come. Though they are gone, their light still shines through their work and the lives they touched. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we continue to remember and honor these incredible souls.